It's great. It's just me and 1,850 PhD physicists. I mean, the high times we have out there, you would not. But in any event, at Los Alamos, we recognize this locality. We practice what we call surgical media relations. We don't even want to get stories in the Washington Post and the New York Times. Oh, we like the science pages of the New York Times. Maybe a science story in the Washington Post. You know what the most important news medium in America is for the Los Alamos National Laboratory? You read it this morning. It's the State in Columbia, South Carolina. Oh. How could that be? Let me tell you how. Senator Thurman is chairman of the Senate Armed Services Committee, and Representative Spence is chairman of the House Armed Services Committee. Now, if they read something in the Post or the Times, it's, yeah, sure. But I know if I can get something into the State, somebody here in town will clip it and shove it right under their eyes because they have staff to do that for them. So just think about that for a minute. That's how local issues can be in a public affairs sense. The fourth thing that we need to think about is that we've already talked about this, but that as a government agency, you will be held to higher standards. You simply will be held to higher standards because you have no competition. And I'm not sure to what extent that may be the reason that some politicians are talking about doing various things to the system. We know from our work over 25 years with AT&T that when AT&T was first broken up in 1984, really it wasn't that the service was that bad or that the costs were that high or anything. It was just this vague feeling that there ought to be competition. And if you think it's been a success, prices have come down in some cases. You may not know this, but they've gone way up in others that you probably don't pay any attention to on your bill. And not only that, but anybody here who understands the present telephone system, raise your hand. You know what? If you were a room full of AT&T executives and we were doing this, and I asked that question, they'd all laugh too. I mean, it's just this incredible turmoil. And a lot of it is just this business that people with no competition are supposed to be perfect. They're supposed to be perfect. And if you're not, then we'll introduce competition because that will make it perfect, and it certainly has worked in the healthcare system. So you begin to get the point. But the fact is, you see, that this is reality. This is not something we can just overlook, because it is a reality, and it is a motivating factor for certain activist groups, certain political views in society, and therefore we have to deal with. It's a mountain that we have to climb. Finally, you don't need me to tell you that there is some level of mistrust, I don't say distrust, but at least mistrust with any agency of the government. I think we can thank Ronnie Reagan for that. It's one of the things that really bugs me. I hope it bugs you. I hope that maybe a subsidiary reason for you being willing to do this is to change that, because the programs we're going to talk about today are the only way I know to really change this view that, if you work for the government, you must be second level, or else you'd be working for private enterprise. I can't tell you how much that bugs me. We counsel DOD, DOE, Agriculture, Forest Service, Social Security, and some other federal agencies. Not by any means all of our work. We're also active in healthcare, education, large corporations, but we do enough with federal agencies to know how untrue this is. In fact, I had a wonderful experience about 3 years ago. I was on a trip and there was a thunderstorm and my plane didn't go, and I was stuck in Washington, D.C. on July 4th. Now, I know that's a great patriotic thing to do, but if you've ever been to Washington, D.C. on July 4th, I do not recommend it. And so I just knew, get up early, get out of town. Get out of town. Because if you don't get up early, you won't be able to get out of town. So I just kind of naturally drove north because that's where I go for DOE offices and others. And I'm driving up past the big DOE complex in Gaithersburg, and my gosh, there's about 50 cars in the parking lot. I said, oh, high level something secret going on. I better get in there and see what's happening. So I take my handy little cube clearance and I go through the gate, and there I am in there. No, it's just a whole lot of people that had important work that they wanted to get done. They hated to give up their day off, but they just felt it was important to get the work done. I drive up about 5 miles from there is a big AT&T installation, another client, and I got to tell you, you could have shot a cannon across their parking lot and you wouldn't hit anybody. And I thought, boy, I wish I had my videotape camera. I wish I could have filmed this, because these are these worthless government people you see, giving up a day off. But I mean, AT&T, forget it. They're probably all the ones who were downtrodden in Washington. I don't know. But I just thought it was interesting, and I think that's a sort of a secondary reason why we need to think about this in the terms that we do. Well, we talked about a lot of issues. I want to spend a little bit of time talking about how people respond to issues, because I think it will help us to focus on how and why we build relationships to deal with the issues. This may be surprising to some of you in public affairs, and again, it may not. A few years ago, a well-known public relations professional named Philip Leslie in Chicago went to an organization called NORC, N-O-R-C, the National Opinion Research Center, which you may be familiar with. Those of you in public affairs should be familiar with it. It's located at the University of Chicago. It's one of 2 repositories we have for all the research, or much of the research, that gets done. When our Dudley Research subsidiary at Jackson, Jackson & Wagner finishes a project and it no longer has immediate proprietary value, we just pack it up and send it to NORC, and then they build it into their archives. So they literally can tell you what research about various publics and stakeholder groups and various issues has found all the way back to 1939. Well, Phil went to the scientists at NORC, and he said, how today do people respond to issues? In other words, can we draw a model of public response to an issue? Well, with all of their database, indeed, they could do that. And so I want to share it with you. We generally call it Leslie's paradigm, since he's the guy who took the initiative to get it done. But here's what it finds. If this is 100% of the stakeholders, and notice that I use that word stakeholders. There is no such thing as a general public. I trust you all know that. Even all of the voters in America do not make a general public. Everybody is so different and has such differing views and backgrounds and so forth that in public relations, public affairs, you just never talk about a general public, because there isn't one. It implies things that simply are not sociologically or psychologically true. Stakeholders, of course, are different. Those are people who have a stake in the outcome of the issue at hand. And so if this is 100% of the stakeholders, those are the people that ought to care about this, because it could have some positive or negative impact on them. Here's how they respond when an issue comes along. A small percentage of them, let's just assign 1%, immediately say, great idea, by gosh, let's privatize the Social Security system. And another 1% over here says, stupid idea, it's a negative, let's never do anything like that. Now notice that neither of those had to think about it, gather any data, debate, discuss. It was just right out of their guts, because they are the big Z zealots. They had this position staked out, and that was it, and bingo. Immediately you discuss something, they're out there. Now the Kettering Foundation, and by the way, of course, it would probably never be equally divided like this, but the Kettering Foundation, in a 5-year series of studies, found that there usually are somewhere around 2% of the people who are zealotous on any issue. And, as they said, those 2% are screwing up American democratic society. Because nobody seems to care about the 98% here in the middle who just want to solve the problem. I mean, do you ever hear the media report what Joe and Jane average in here think? Why, no, it's he said, she said, and then he said. Big debate, big fight going on here. Go to a congressional hearing. No, you know, average people ever come in and say, senators and congressmen, we'd like you to solve this problem? Hell no. It's the people on those two fringes who were there. In 1974, we thought we were being very smart when NEPA was passed, the National Environmental Policy Act, and we built in that absolute mandate for public participation. What a joke. It was a great idea, but if you've been to any public meetings, you know who comes. It's only those two, and when they come, they don't want to discuss the issue. They say, where's the cameras? Where's the reporters? I want to get some, you know, airtime and some coverage out of this. It's an unfortunate fact, but that's kind of where we are. Now, where are the rest of the people? Why aren't they involved in this? Well, one of the reasons is they don't come to the hearings because they don't want to be in the same room with these idiots. And notice that some of them are on your side. Those are your worst enemies. They're busy turning people away from your position because they're so zealous about it. Over here you've got two groups, and I will again assign equal numbers, even though it wouldn't be like that in real life probably. 45%, these are kind of leaning favorable, these are kind of leaning unfavorable. If you do, you know, good old statistical sample research, well, of course, that'll be 90% of your answer, which is why we don't use, many of us in the profession don't use statistical samples anymore, because here's the problem. These 90%, of course they'll have an opinion. My God, it's un-American not to have an opinion. When Gallup calls, you have an opinion. The fact you never heard of the issue until he called has nothing to do with it. These 90% wouldn't do anything about it if their lives depended on it. You hear that? 9 out of 10 people on any issue will not bestir themselves. They'll talk about it at parties. They'll make complaint about it on the bus, but they won't do anything about it. And that's you and me most of the time. Now, why is this true? Well, got any extra time to get involved in an issue? Aren't there a lot of issues you wish you had time to really get in there? Who the hell has time for this? I got a family, I got some hobbies, I got my church or my civic duties or whatever it is that I'm doing, and so these people are just out of it. Except that they will answer research, and that's the trouble with government by putting your finger in the air. You see, that's why the NRA is the most powerful lobby in Congress, because 90% of people won't do anything about it, and they have their zealots absolutely, totally organized. They are so organized. They don't trust parents to pass the word on to their kids, and so they have what they call their grandparents' society, and their job is to go around the parents down to the grandkids and make sure that they get the message. That is zealotry, I suggest. These 45%, I call them Joe and Jane six-pack. The sociologists are kinder to them. The sociologists say that they are ignorant and apathetic. Ignorant not in a pejorative sense, ignorant and they just haven't bothered to get the data. They're ignorant and apathetic. And if you do research with them and you ask them, are you ignorant and apathetic? They'll tell you every time, I don't know and I don't care. What that leaves you, and here's the key to this research. We long suspected this, but this was the first real proof of this, and since then it's been proven probably 1,000 times. There's 8% in the middle here who care about the issue. They are not zealotous. They're willing to debate it and discuss it. And they are the opinion leaders. Because what opinion leaders do in society is to facilitate the discussion. Of course, when the issue comes up, they have some views on this usually. But they're not hung up on those views. If you've got a better idea, they're willing to say, yeah, you're right. I'll change my views to go along with that. and they facilitate what